grab a seat. We're about to start right now. What's happening? Okay, you ready? Everybody, your attention please. This is Tracy Pattin. Tracy is a fabulous podcaster. She also does a variety podcast for Variety Magazine. And this is Robert Starr. Robert is a written this book. And Tracy and Robert are going to talk about the golden days of New York, Andy Warhol, and the scene. So, without any further ado.
Hello, everyone. You guys can hear me okay?
Oh, quiet!
I have to ask you all, because I have a little bit of if we could be a little bit quiet so we can continue.
We'll wait until
Wait till they're silent.
Wait till they're quiet. We're good.
Can we close?
it's closed.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Well, as Roy said, this is my dear friend Robert Starr, and Robert is a longtime friend of mine, and he regaled me with stories over the years, but I had no idea until I read this book how many more stories Robert had to tell. And so let me just read from the back of the book, and then we'll talk to Robert. Okay. This is the high-speed, darkly hilarious story of how a talented young Robert Starr with a razor wit, a tender heart, and an Armani suit catapults into the epicenter of the super rich, the super famous, and the super vulnerable in the brazenly twisted worlds of art, fashion, advertising, and love. Starr finds himself front and center with Andy Warhol, Mick Jagger, Jerry Hall, Jennifer Connelly, Antonio Lopez, David Hockney, Truman Capote, and many others. But this is also a story of overwhelming love and laughs, wretched excess, fun, success, and overcoming the unimaginable. Growing up as a lonely gay kid in a decaying Coney Island surrounded by freak shows and a tunnel of love, Starr tells his incredible, no-holds-barred story with his heart splat on the page right from the beginning. And it's all true. The heartbreak of Static Cling may just be the wildest ride since the Coney Island cycle. Robert Starr.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. This is another episode of surreal pop rock in my life, which has kept on happening from the beginning. People who know me know pieces of my story and told me, Robert, you should really write this down. And I said, no, write a memoir? And in my head, it was like, write a memoir, drop dead, you know. But then it came to a point where basically I had nothing else to create. And I can't live without creating something. And the thing that I was able to create was the time travel that it took me for 3 years writing this book. I didn't write it to be published or read or be here, which is completely amazing to me, or on a national book tour, which will begin September 30th at the Circus in Books, which is also bizarre, and we'll go on from there. I wrote it to put in a box for someone to discover, maybe when I'm gone, that I was here. But also, no matter how many incredible, astounding, and unexpected connections that kept on happening with the most famous and the most infamous crackpots and geniuses in my life threw me into high-speed detours and kept on happening and learning and moving forward into a life that I never imagined. I was a very lonely, gay, miserable kid growing up in the middle of Coney Island. Have any of you been to Coney Island? Yeah. Okay. So you know that Coney Island is a peninsula, and it only has 3 avenues: Mermaid, Neptune, and Surf. That might have been the title for this book, but I came across this title and this image for this cover, and there was nothing that spoke to my life more than this, and I hope you like it. I'll talk to you more about that, but the reason that I was so unhappy was that I knew that I was different. I knew that I was lonely. I knew that I wanted to be an artist, but I had no idea how that would happen, and I had no idea what kind of art I would produce. I had a lot of dreams, and I've been told, especially, Robert, you're living in a dream world. I never answered verbally, but mentally the answer was, I live for that dream world. If I didn't have that dream world, I'd kill myself. I believe in that dream world. I believe that spectacular things will happen. And I also believe that if you believe in yourself, and if you believe in spectacular things and wonderful things will happen to you, they will, when you least expect it and when you need it most. And you're not looking for it. You don't find love, real love, unconditional love, that I was blessed to have by looking for it. It just happens. Because you believe that it's going to happen, but you don't know where, you don't know when, and everything is just happens. So I think that this book is not only about my life and a very entertaining trip with episodes with people like Truman Capote, which was astounding to me. And episodes of confrontations with Andy Warhol, who I met in 1985 when I was 18 years old and had just a few months into my School of Visual Arts, the school of my dreams, and still astounded that I got there. How in the world this kid from Coney Island get to go to the School of Visual Arts for the next 4 years of his life? Among the most talented young artists exploring everything and creating themselves. And there was one that stood out, and we became fast friends. And his name was Robert Starr. And I knew that he would be a great artist. He had an incredible mind. He was in my painting class, and he was preparing to do a series of paintings, maybe silk screens, lithographs, or prints of the hidden, inner, unexposed lives of Woody Woodpecker, Daffy Duck, who else was it? Oh, the Roadrunner, and Bugs Bunny. And it was spectacular work. And he told me that there's a great place to find really interesting art supplies. And we made a date to go take a walk to Canal Street. So we're on our way to Canal Street. It's a long walk from my little apartment, which is on 21st Street, and he lived on 20th Street. The School of Visual Arts is on 23rd Street. Oh, also, what was amazing is that I was finally living in Manhattan. I was not in Coney Island anymore. and I remember as a kid being taken to Brooklyn Heights, standing on the promenade, and looking over the river at the skyline of Manhattan and saying, okay, New York City, I'm going to come here. Because I knew that it was first information and it was the most incredible city in the entire world, and I wanted to be there. And here I am. Now, the chain of events of how I got to the School of Visual Arts for 4 years is mind-blowing. I don't come from a family that had a college fund. Okay? That's explained in the book. So we're walking down to Canal Street, and Ronnie stops and introduces me to all of his friends. Fire hydrants. He's made friends with every one of them, and he's named every one of them. And he's opened my eyes to the differences of each one's patina, that each one has a different expression, that they're not all the same height, that he's photographed every one of them in every single situation. At dawn, at sunset, when the street lights come, and the shadows that they cast, and how mad they become if somebody walks in front of them. It was just astounding to me. It was just the most inspirational walk to Canal Street. We get to Canal Street, and it's a bazaar at that time of outdoor vendors from little stores. And there were barrels of buttons in every shape, color, and size. Barrels of screws in black and pink and yellow and green. And tables like this, much bigger, that were piled to the sky with hinges. Hinges that big and hinges that big. In silver and black and lacquered red and orange. And I was just like mesmerized with it, thinking about all the connections that these hinges could possibly make. These are art supplies, not like brushes and paint and whatever. These are unexpected inspirations. And speaking of unexpected inspirations, as I'm going through the hinges and picking out the ones that I really, really want, Ronnie Petrona moves on and stops dead in his tracks and says, Robert, get over here. So I put down the hinges and I run over to Ronnie, and he's standing there, transfixed on this thing that is emerged from the side of the building, this big around. And it comes from the base of the wall, and it comes up and it grows up to this tall and spreads out into 3 heads, a 3-headed fire hydrant. It was spectacular. Ronnie reaches into his canvas bag and takes out his brownie and takes photographs of it, and he instantly names it Molarian Curly. How perfect. And then he turns to me and says, you want to go to the factory? And I go, wow, Jesus Christ, I would love to see a fire hydrant factory. I never thought I would be able to go to the fire hydrant. He said, no, Andy's factory, Andy Warhol's factory. I said, how do you know Andy Warhol? He said, I helped him do silk screens. Come on, let's get onto a bus. Well, there was nothing that I could say except to get on the bus in front of Control to Andy's factory. And we arrived somewhere on the Upper East Side in the 40s and get into this elevator. that's attached to this nondescript kind of warehouse type of building and get into this cage of an elevator. And we go upstairs and the cage opens, and I'm blinded by the silver factory, Andy Warhol's original silver factory. This is 1965 and I'm 18 years old, right? And there's Andy among a menagerie so outrageous, more outrageous than my initial inspiration as a child of the back alley sideshows, you know, where there was, you know, lobster boy and alligator and Pinhead, who was always so happy. And then there was the House of Horrors, which wasn't horrifying at all, but it was a foretelling that, Robert, you will be in a house of horror sometime in the future and realize the absurdity of it. And you really have. And then the most powerful draw was the tunnel of love. I knew that I wanted to be, I wanted that kind of love. Because I was fortunate enough to have a mother who taught me, who was actually the definition of unconditional love. I knew how important that was. I knew it when I was 10 years old. But never thought that it would happen. Because it doesn't happen to very many people. Snap back to 1965 in Andy Warhol's original factory, and I meet Katrina Tolan and Nico and Viva and Lou Reed and Bridget Berlin and Ron Malanga, and I have a new family. The strangest creatures on earth. And Undine tells me, you know, Andy has a nickname. I created it. I said, yeah, what is his nickname? He says, Drella. I said, what is Drella? He says, it's a combination of Dracula and Cinderella. And Andy hates it. But anyone who really knows Andy knows how appropriate that really is. And boy, I found that. But they also introduced me to the back room of Max's Kansas City, which became my home away from home for the next 4 years until I graduated from the School of Visual Arts. Because in that back room, it was the epicenter of anybody who was an artist, a performer, a writer, anyone from around the world who was on business in New York or visiting New York, and you never knew what would take place. It was a theater of the ridiculous, you know. And at that time in the 60s, they were theater in the streets, but nothing like that. I mean, one day there would be Salvatore Dali and his wife Gala. The next day there would be Halsey. And the next day somebody would be walking his pet elephant, baby elephant on a leash, which nobody paid attention to because it wasn't strange enough. And there I met Candy Darling, Jackie Curtis, and my dearest friend, Hollywood Long. And also Andrea Feldman, who became Andrea Ripp's Warhol. And they weren't Andy Warhol superstars yet, but they were bound to be. Andrea was a star in Andy Warhol's heat in the early 70s, playing Sylvia Miles' daughter, lesbian daughter. And Holly Whitlow was in Andy Warhol's Trash, Joe D'Alessandro, which started her life's long career. So that's how I met Andy. And I had many, many more confrontations with Andy and run-ins with Andy, not only in his original studio, but all the way through all his studios until his final studio, that was on Union Square. Cut to
Robert, I have some questions before we finish.
Yeah.
Okay, because I want to get.
I just wanted to tell you about that.
It's so great.
Because this is, you know, this is a pop 2 show. I had a pop art life, and I met Andy, who was really the prince of pop art. You know, I also had Lichtenstein right on the pop art. But anyway.
Well, I love that you talked about Max's Kansas City. That's fascinating. I think it's fascinating to hear about your life in advertising, just briefly, because Robert was post-Mad Men. So he was in this wild world of advertising, Madison Avenue. Just give us like a snippet of that.
Well, you know, I told you that I wanted to be an artist when I was like 10 years old, but I had no idea what canvas I would use. So then, when Ronnie introduced me to Andy, Andy said, Ronnie told me that you're really good in advertising. I said, oh, really? He says, oh, yeah, I did advertising. I really liked it. I said, you did, Andy? He said, yeah, I did advertising for shoes. And then he told me the name of the store. It was either J. Berger or A.S. Beck, I don't remember. And I said, oh, that's great. And then he popped a Polaroid on my face, and then he said, oh, I have to see something. I have to talk to Jerome Lang, and then he disappeared. But at the School of Visual Arts, I realized that what my canvas could possibly be. And for me, advertising and making television commercials, 30-second movies that would be on millions of screens across this country, print campaigns that would be in every magazine and newspaper across this country, billboards, posters, and all of that, was a terrific canvas to work with and create the kind of advertising that wasn't done before. So that was my canvas. I focused on that all throughout the School of Visual Arts and was determined to get my foot in the door at one of the biggest advertising and most creative advertising agencies in the world, which was almost impossible. But I did. And I knew this is the place. And it was Doyle Dane Burbank, the advertising agency that took an ugly, underpowered car that was made in Germany and turned it into Beatlemania, Volkswagen Beetle. And they did incredible advertising, groundbreaking advertising. I was among really genius creative directors and people there. And I turned out to be the youngest senior vice president creative director of the world. And I had the power then. I had the power. I had the power to hire the photographers like Abaddon or Bill King, if I wanted to, or Antonio, to do things that he's never done before. And be introduced to and work with Jerry Hall and Jessica Lang and Iman and Linda Evangelista and Dora and I had clients that ranged from Chanel to Clara to Armani to Atari to Bankers Trust to American Airlines to Procter & Gamble, you name it. And I was able to make them realize that you don't do what your competitors do because they're successful doing what they do. And if you do that, you're wasting your money. You're doing what I consider invisible advertising. We have to do it in a completely different way. And they finally let me do it. And I was in heaven. And it took me to California to incredible shoots that I did here with great directors, filmmakers, editors, musicians. And I did commercials with John Weston, and I introduced the Polaroid SX70 with some moments of living it. And, you know, my world was expanded and exploded, you know, and it was the greatest success of my lifetime, other than, without thinking about it, without expecting it, I opened a door and I looked into his eyes, and I found in his eyes my past, my present, and my future, and the love of my life. Don Hall. And we were together for close to 27 years. And what we did together was astounding. The life that we built together was astounding. And then everything exploded. And everything was lost. And the static of grief grabbed onto me and would not let go. And I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't read a clock. There was no time. I was no longer who I was. It was as if I was amputated in half. And I wanted very much to kill myself. But I couldn't. Not after seeing how Don fought. Not only for his last breath, but for everybody who else was dying all around us. And also, my mother was up in age and a widow, and my suicide would have killed her, and I could not do that to Zelda.
So Robert?
So I found a way. Speaking of universality, whatever the hell you say, universal, what this has to do with you, all of us get hit in the face with either a bad diagnosis, some kind of tragedy, some kind of insurmountable obstacle that comes out of you, and how in the world you deal with it. So there's some tips about that because I've done some.
And that was the question I was going to ask you. Before we wrap up, Robert, there's so many stories. I mean, this is go on and on. They're so fascinating. Shall we ask for questions? A couple questions before we finish?
You got anything that you want to ask me?
We can take one or two questions if you have them.
Okay, you're going in or whatever. Yeah.
I'm curious as to what exactly is a what exactly is a static cling?
Thank you. That's exactly the question I have. The title of your book.
Great question.
How did you come to static cling, the Heartbreak of static
No,
cling?
what does it mean?
What does static cling mean? Okay?
What's it mean? Yeah.
What does it mean?
It's shocking. It's hair-raising. It's unexpected.
True. It's true.
It's hilarious. And I've been told it to be very embarrassing.
And so
it
static
comes
cling
from-
literally comes from
And it also comes from
The dryer.
advertising experience.
You take clothes out of the dryer.
There used to be a
thought it was some
campaign,
form of
the Heartbreak of psoriasis. The Heartbreak of static cling is also an ode to my friend Roy Lichtenstein's pop art. The Heartbreak of static cling is both hilarious and tragic, and tragically hilarious as the life I've lived, and is the life that everyone lives. There's a lot of dimension to it. And of course, I challenged it with yellow pads up to here with alternative titles and nothing that I think that I can capture who the hell I am and the temperature of this book. So, judge my book by its cover. Either you get it or you don't. Or it's compelling even if you don't get it. But it certainly doesn't look like somebody's biography about how much in love they are with that power.
Well, thank you. The title's very the title's very intriguing, and I thought it might refer to some kind of coitus.
Some kind, actually, I didn't hear that. Some kind of
Coitus.
Coitus.
Coitus. You
coitus.
thought it referred to some sort
He
of.
thought it was referencing coitus.
Well, why not?
But now we can.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
hello.
I like. Yeah. It'll sell.
So, anybody else have any?
Well, unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. And on that note of the heartbreak of static playing, Robert, what a story, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
With
being
us.
here.
If anybody would like to purchase the book, they're $40 and he'll sign them for you. Robert, please sign one to Roy Rogers. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to invite everyone here. My publisher has organized the official launch of my national bookstore, and that will be one of those. I'll leave these flyers here. It will be Monday, September 30th, at the Circus of Books, beginning at 7 o'clock, and that will be filmed. And I hope to see you there because it's going to be quite a party.
Great.